Okay, so here you can see my edge. I've used this blade a little bit. This is a ZDP 189. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go and take this to the handcuffs. Now, first note, ZDP. I guess some people have been starting to call it a super steel. It's a Japanese steel that has a very high amount of carbon, 3%, and then 20% chromium, and then a Rockwell hardness somewhere in the 66 to 68. The minimal Rockwell hardness is 65. The impact resistance is half of 440C, so it's right around the 8. So it's not very good on the Sharpie. You have other options of, today I'm going to talk about the Delica, which is this one right here. Then you have the Dragonfly ZDP, and then you have the Stretch, and then you have the Endura. The other ingredients, the composition of the alloy, are not readily available online. I think the Japanese people want to keep it a secret. You can see the cut that's making. It's a pretty good cut. You can see the edge. Now you can see up here. There's a large reflection. That part's dull. Most of it is dull now. You can see the. Let's go a little bit longer before I get into the video. Now, this is a saber ground, flat grind. This is the full, the whole blade. It's not the partially serrated version. Note those serrations really help this process much more. Like you're able to much more cut through this metal if there were serrations. And I'm probably just going to later make my own home serrations, copy the Christie style. So you can see, keeps going through. A
real quick video talking about why I don't like backlocks.
Shout out.
I took this out of my pocket. I forget what I was going to use it for, maybe to pick my teeth or something, and opened it. Oh, what happened? It didn't lock. Failure. Yes, I know. And you know why? Because of a little thing called lint. There's a bunch of lint in there. And this isn't the first time that it's happened to me with backlocks. I've just never been a fan of them because of that. I don't know.
Here's a comment by our nice YouTube friend Pavlov Sandor. You can see right here, a pocket jam with lint. You hear me read this?
This is the Endura form, flat grind.
Please stay in school.
I discovered something.
This is why it's so hard to find this dang video.
That I think people should know about. This is not a video insulting anybody that uses this as a backup weapon. It's just a warning. It's necessary. This is what I discovered. And I'm not touching the lock, by the way.
Okay, and here's me testing the Delica. Right? Okay. Here's a quick little shot of the toughness of ZDP compared down here to 440C. See? There's ATS-34, the Lanzos. Here's the composition. So you can see right here that ZDP was only at 8 foot-pounds impact toughness compared to S90V or CTS 20CP up there at 19, and there's D2. Welcome and thank you for tuning to Neptune Knives. Today we're going to be looking at the ZDP 189 steel products from Spyderco. Here's the Dragonfly. There's the Delica, and everyone's familiar with the Endura and the Stretch. All of the ZDP versions are from Japan, Seiki City, because that's of course where ZDP 189 steel is made. Now you saw on the previous image there was about 1.3% molybdenum and 1.5% tungsten. So when you add that together, you have almost 3% of tool steel in this blade. And then along with the high percent of carbon, which is 3%. And it's funny that there's a 20% chromium content in there, which makes the knife so brittle because there's so much alloy in it. How I would classify this knife is if you're a backpacker, perhaps a rock climber, and you want a knife that has a lot of power, packs a punch, and practically no weight because of all the FRN on all these 4 possible models. But it's at the same time not tactical, and that's the key thing here. The knife is not tactical. My recommendation is never consider it that way. Not the Endura, because you saw the Endura fail. You saw the Delica make the Delica fail. And even the Stretch, I'm most certain it'll fail too, because perhaps that's just Spyderco, how Spyderco does their back locks. Cold Steel's triad lock is very strong. That wouldn't fail. And for me personally, I will take a lock that doesn't fail over steel. The Marines or SOCOM uses Strider knives because back locks just don't work very well in the outdoors. People who say that frame locks are like the standard of why they're the strongest of locks, of course they're not. Where they really shine is when you're in the outdoors, and maintenance and the ability to also receive dynamic force, meaning not just putting a weight and hanging it, but actually hitting it. Why would I ever hit the spine of a knife and do the spine whacking? Why would I ever do that in real life? Well, in a self-defense situation, many things could happen. You could, one, perhaps try to stab someone and thrust and miss and hit the wall. They may have a studded belt, a cell phone, a knife on them, perhaps something solid to when you stab, and the knife jams right into it. Unless you have training, when people fight, you're swinging your arms around. Maybe as you go back to swing and then you swing forward, when you're going back, you hit something. You hit the wall, hit the counter or whatever, and bam, it unlocks again. So to me, it's not safe for tactical use. ZDP is very fragile if you see on those charts. Now for me, I prefer then the saber ground blade, where it's not completely flat like this. And you have to look at that. The Stretch was a 3.5 inch blade that's flat ground, but much more handle ergonomics. And then the Endura, you can get saber ground if you want. Now as for outdoor though, and perhaps just everyday use, now I'm going to agree with Nut and Fancy on this one. And I wish that they didn't have stainless steel liners inside. And I know my camera is not so good, but you can see the reflection of it. Now the Endura and the Stretch and the Delica all have stainless steel liners. The Dragonfly does not. Getting water in here, and when you open it up, there's a lot of oil on it already. Getting water in here is not such a big deal, but perhaps if it was blood or just mud, that's when you start to really it starts to cause a problem. And with the way this is designed, how the FRN handles come apart, and you have to move the liners apart to put the blade and washers in, it's a hassle outdoors. So for example, here's what the washers look like, and there's probably other videos showing this out there, but that's the washer. It's very paper thin. Mine doesn't even have washers in it, and I can still flick it open. So I'll note that this pivot on the Delica tends to come loose. You need to Loctite it, Teflon tape it, with or without the washers. Just tends to happen that way. Now I like the Dragonfly because there is no liners in there, so it's much less maintenance. So you can kind of put this one away, and just use it when you need to. But there's a flaw with the Dragonfly, which is for anyone doing this, whoever uses this knife, please know, if you're the kind of individual who when you push down the blade, your thumb makes contact with the blade, you can keep cutting your thumb. Which I had one point seen that my thumb kept getting portions of skin cut off, and I was like, what is doing that? It's the Dragonfly. You have to make sure that when you open it, if you're one of these individuals, to open more carefully. Between an Endura and a Delica, would I want an Endura? For me, if I'm not going to be doing anything tactical, and I'm just going to be doing actual chores and tasks where I'm not going to possibly disengage the lock, so I'm going to do careful cutting, then I don't need a large blade. I can do careful cutting with a 3-inch blade. You know, if you want to go up to a stretch, I would say the stretch is better ergonomics. Similar to this Anzo, which I thought was fitting since we saw that ATS-34 comparison. You know, these Anzos, you know, the shape is very similar to the stretch if you just go look at it. Along with the Sage 3 or 2, you know, it's the same thing. And what it does is it has this bulk here, and along with this deep choil, so your hand can't slide down the blade. Now, I can say with gloves, thankfully all backlocks work very well with gloves. But I can say that the Delica is not so good with gloves because of this thinned down portion right here. And it can get a little dangerous, you know, when wet is also sort of an issue, I would say. This bidirectional pattern really is an important aspect of keeping it gripped into your hand. Someone might say also, well, why would your knife be wet? Perhaps not every individual, but me, when I go backpacking, I actually like to try to get across water. I like to go climb up on rocks. This is kind of what Mel had said, but when you are dealing with food preparation, the blood, you know, is liquid, and it can affect your grip. Now, I'm not saying that everyone will ever be doing this all the time, but assume that if you were to rely on this for self-defense, and you were to cut at somebody, and then there was blood on the handle, your hand now is wet. So, now the Endura, because of its larger size, will be more safer to hold with gloves, you know, and the larger handle will allow for more leeway if your hand does move. But at that point, I vote the stretch, because the stretch has this ergonomic shape, just like the Sage, to really lock in your hand. So these Spyderco ZDP 189 knives, you know, they're kind of like all hit or miss. You know, if the stretch, you know, were a thicker blade stock, you know, to compensate for that weak ZDP steel, then it would be a little bit better. And if they didn't have liners, you wouldn't have to worry about them outdoors. But even with the backlocks still, outdoors it's a little risky. Note that this Dragonfly pivot is not shouldered or notched, so when you unscrew it, it just keeps spinning around, so you can't really take apart the small Dragonfly. You know, you got at least some traction when wet and some ability to use it with gloves, so long as you exercise caution. But then you got to deal with those stainless steel liners. You know, and if you don't mind maintaining it, then it's no big deal. You know, but nevertheless, you know, look at it as a backup knife. You know, a primary knife should be able to handle a variety of tasks, emergency situations. I mean, that's how I feel. I always feel you always should have one tool steel and one, you know, kind of a survival steel, one that's very versatile, such as a 154 CM or you know, even VG10, N690 CO, anything that just can handle a variety of conditions. You know, titanium liner. You know, like why Emerson uses the titanium liner locks is not because, you know, of any other reason other than the fact that it's corrosion resistant. You don't have to deal with maintaining it. And you know, the SEALs chose those knives because, you know, less maintenance issues. Regardless, these all tend to have that safety choil. Like I said, it's nice to be able to have this kind of steel on you. ZDP is pretty powerful. I mean, you saw it has an ability to go through that metal, and if you just take a diamond rod, and I would suggest, in my experience, and if you read around, diamond's the way you got to go. You use a diamond rod to sharpen it, but then once you've gotten that point, I like to go over it with a fine ceramic stone, because at that point you actually get a very razor sharp edge. In terms of the pocket clips, the Dragonflies come with this wire style, but if you attach the lanyard, it's easy enough to pull out your pocket quickly. These have a nice tactical style pocket clip. You know, there's the butt of the handle protruding for you to grab onto. This has a sort of almost a somewhat of a texture to it, where it isn't completely smooth and slippery. And of course, it has a little dent for your finger to grab onto. And then the Enduras and Delicas, the general idea of what it looks like inside. You know, I can say that, you know, you're getting the performance of ZDP. And the only reason why we ever considered this knife personally was that at the production level, when you want a compact folder or one more in a smaller size, it's very rare to find one with a high performance steel. On average, you're going to find S30V, and the ZDP definitely outperforms S30V in terms of edge retention, especially even cutting through that metal. So you're getting more out of this steel, but you just have to be aware of its limits in terms of its grip, in terms of its perhaps the tactical use of the lock mechanism, the deployment, being affected by lint or dirt, and its outdoor limitations too, because of the liners and because of the back lock. Just bear in mind that this is something you use with caution. That is the spring bar, the little piece of metal that is actually flipped over and pushes up on this, and then you can see how the knife locks up. You can just tell there's not much there. That's why it's so easy to pop out. When there's some movement there from a spine whack, it's very easy to just slide out. If that perhaps was deeper, more designed like a triad lock, why Spyderco doesn't do that, who knows. Here's a quick little review. This is a little back spacer that can come off. Kind of have to hold that stupid lock bar, tension bar down, and as you put this over, just try to get all the females to go back into the little holes, and then slowly start adding the screws. And the screws, of course, being from 6C Japan, even the small size, they're pretty durable. All the Japanese screws, Spyderco construction hardware is pretty good. Thank you for watching.